Hey everybody, this is Tony UC de Velez, also known as Tony UV, joined by Abhay Bhargav. Abhay, great to see you again. It's been a while since I saw you last in San Francisco. By the way, if I butchered your name, please let the audiences know who might have a more international ability than I do to pronounce your name, but it's great to see you.
Thanks, Tony. And you didn't butcher the name. It was actually quite spot on. So thank you. Thanks for that. And it was really nice meeting you in San Francisco. And I think we're coming up on a year meeting again, probably again in San Francisco in April. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, always the annual pilgrimage to different security conferences. But we're here today to talk about something that we both love to talk about. Always around infosec, cybersecurity, but more specifically around training. And before we get started, why don't you introduce a little bit about yourself, also about We45? I have had a pleasure of liaising with you for quite some time, but for our audience members out there, tell us a little bit about yourself and also We45.
Sure, thanks. My name is Abhay, and I run two companies. One is V45, which is an application security consulting and services company. And more recently, over the last 1.5 years, we started APPSEC Engineer. Now, that is the training platform, the training company. And this was really born out of a lot of the training that we started doing at places like OWASP and Black Hat and stuff like that. And we do a lot of defensive training, not offensive. One of the things that we started working on is defensive trainings like DevSecOps, cloud security, how to set up AWS securely, how to run a secure pipeline, things like that. And that became really popular in places like Black Hat and DEF CON and OWASP. And we realized that there was a pretty huge need for this in the market. So that's why we built AppSec Engineer, where we prioritize defensive security education. It could be secure coding or setting up secure pipelines or cloud environments and so on. And that's why we built AppSec Engineer, so that everyone could get access to this. And companies could actually take this and get their people trained in different elements of security, which is, I think, the need of the hour. So yeah, that's been my background. I've been in application security for almost 14 years. I think 14 years now. I've written a couple of books, but largely I've been an educator for most of that time. And I've done a lot of offensive work. I've done a lot of defensive work, but I've done a lot of education as well. So yeah, that's been my background.
Well, it's great to always talk to you. And just for the audiences out there too, I'll introduce myself really quickly. I go by Tony UV. I'm the CEO and founder of VerSprite. We're a global cybersecurity firm. I also am the author of the process for attack simulation and threat analysis, which was was actually co-author with Marco Morana on that methodology. It's a risk-centric application threat modeling methodology. And we wrote a book in 2015 called Risk-Centric Threat Modeling for those that are interested. Just a little bit about VerSprite. So we're a services firm, purely consulting. We have 5 major divisions. We have a research team that does exploit development on trying to find new 0 days and end days. And then we have a GRC group that focuses on security program management. We have an offensive team that does everything offensive, right? Trying to hack into everything from SAP modules to mainframes to web applications to mobile clients, etc. We have a threat intel group, which I affectionately call our cyber sleuths, which are trying to find out, who did what, when, where, and how, and also look to, obtain threat intel. We recently published our Envisions report out of that group, which is one of the unique things from us as a consulting firm, where we look at the crossroads of geopolitical risk and cybersecurity. So please check it out. And then the last group is a DevSecOps group, which actually is a great segue into today's conversation. But the DevSecOps group for us is a group that focuses on providing services on helping clients automate their security workflows. And in today's world, definitely need a lot of that, since the common challenges that are still probably even worse today are not enough talent, not enough resources, not enough time, and way too much data. So that's a little bit about VerSprite. It's a little bit about We45. Again, I'm joined here by Abhay. We're going to be talking about security training. Now, let's start at the beginning in terms of we both have a lot. I have 27 years of ITIS experience, and so we've seen a lot of fails. We've seen a lot of the traditional means of what, let's talk about classroom style training, the instructor going on site and teaching once a year, Let's talk about LMS, right? Learning management systems that are out there, or death by PowerPoint, where you have, or even nowadays you have those animated graphic videos trying to, create some fun into, a pretty stale topic for many, right? That are outside cybersecurity. What comes to mind for you, Abhay, when it comes to some of the more kind of like stigmatic words that you associate or you've seen associated with security awareness training in the past?
Yeah, I mean, the term security awareness training has very broad connotations, right? So there's one side, which is, of course, training everybody in the company on things like phishing and, general security awareness. Hey, what to do when you find a USB stick somewhere in the parking lot and stuff like that. So that's also security awareness training. But there's also another facet of security awareness training, which is technical security awareness training. And that's something that does not get as much importance or does not get as much discussion around it. And I think that's probably the most underrated form of security awareness training, because any organization today, whether it be government or retail or manufacturing or what have you, is a technology company, right? They are building apps, they're deploying apps on the cloud, they're deploying apps in private environments, they're deploying apps in Kubernetes, they're probably running CI/CD pipelines. And this needs a lot of education, because the problem today is that, again, you're short of people. At the same time, you're wildly evolved to this massive technology company without you even realizing it, and you're running perhaps the most sophisticated tech in the world without thinking about security. So really, the conversation that you need to have if you're a security manager or in the product security side, or even someone who is, let's say, a little higher level, like a CIO, is that how are we even, first of all, how are we sourcing talent for this sort of thing? How are we developing talent? And how are we maintaining awareness for, our evolving tech stack, which is evolving at a pretty rapid pace? I'm sure you'll agree.
Absolutely, yeah. The attack surface or the overall tech stack definitely is evolving. We see language sets evolving, frameworks evolving, plugins evolving. So being able to obviously all the tech that's in the three major CSPs and beyond in the cloud is definitely evolving. But we're going to get into some good hands-on conversation, especially about some of the things that you've built at We45, and we'll talk about the power of hands-on training in general, right? I'm thinking right now about the kind of how as an industry we've come up. Everyone has seen, for example, traditional SANS classes, right? SANS, great institution, and they basically have the traditional classroom style. People go on a pilgrimage somewhere and they sit for sometimes many days. One of the problems, of course, and I'm sure you'll agree, is that these are expensive classes, right? And also it takes you away from what you have to do. And so for employers, costs, especially in today's global economy, it's some interesting global economic times. We see that sometimes price points, time allotments can't really be justified, right? Especially if you're an engineer, if you're a DevOps engineer, you don't have the time and luxury to be gone a full entire week, and to at a price point that's sometimes unobtainable. So I think that there's an adage that people say when they're trying to learn a foreign language, and that is, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? And this is a good point to really kind of usher in the topic of hands-on training. So, you have obligatory awareness training that kind of talks about a subject, maybe around regulatory requirements, maybe around some technical security requirements for encryption use, or, security classes that the company might be needing to use. But that's more informative, right? I think what we're going to dive into today is really about how do you do it from a technical level, right? And what tools do you actually need to be able to practice so that you can use it and not lose it? Going back to that, what I just said, would you agree with all that, or what would you add to that?
Absolutely. I think I agree pretty much with everything that you said. I just like to add a couple of things. One thing is that so far, if you look at absolutely, you brought up SANS, and that's a very good discussion point to start off with. Yes. I mean, there have been, especially in the world of instructor-led training, there are lots of options, right? You have SANS, you have Black Hat, you have OWASP events, but like you said, expense, there is a huge expense factor there. Not only do you have to spend on the courses in SANS, it runs into like $8,000, $9,000 and change. And beyond that as well, you need to spend for that one person to go and get that knowledge, and that person needs to be unavailable for a long time. So there are hands-on training today is pretty expensive, especially in the instructor-led variety or the live variety. So one of the things that we initially set out to do, and just to go back a little on our history and background here, we started doing that, and we still do that, by the way. That is still a lot of our world, is still doing a lot of live classes and things like that. It's a lot of fun. We love it. I'm sure the people love it. Now, our objective was to bring that same hands-on experience to a sit at your own, wherever you are, and still experience hands-on. Because one of the things that you will see, and even Gartner has mentioned this, you see this bringing up all the time, cloud projects or transformation projects or security projects fail largely because people don't have hands-on skills. And hands-on skills are important because just knowing something. So let's say I know something called Kubernetes, or I know something called Kubernetes admission controllers, for instance, from a security standpoint. Knowing that is nearly not good enough because I don't know how to implement it. And when I get into an organization, the organization needs me to solve serious security problems by implementing this stuff. So one of the models that we always insisted on is doing bite-sized training, right? So we don't cover Kubernetes security. We talk about Kubernetes network security. So it's very focused, and we only have specific labs related to that. And those labs teach you step by step how to do things in a real world environment. We don't gamify it. We don't emulate it. We don't have some kind of fancy simulator running on there. We have real world stuff. We actually tell you that, hey, this is the environment that you need to protect. You need to do something you need to add some network access control so that Kubernetes, you can do this, or you can do this with AWS or wherever it is. The idea here is that you want to give them a realistic scenario that they would often run into at their own workspaces, for them to actually appreciate this and for them to take this and say, oh yeah, this is what I need to do when handling Kubernetes. And that's really where we have seen a lot of success. The hands-on is pretty much the way to do things. I would say that if your training does not have hands-on security or hands-on labs or hands-on learning of some sort, you're really not being as effective as you could. And it becomes very suboptimal at that point.
Absolutely. You put down some golden nuggets there. I'm just going to dress them up a little bit more. You said a lot of good things, that really reminds me of, again, going back to the broader theme of security awareness. There's a lot of individuals that are trying to get in or continuing their education in information security, cybersecurity, with continuing education and training, but it's not hands-on, right? So they're good test takers, and they're getting a lot of acronyms behind their names. But there's a huge difference. And I think that, those listening out there really should take this to heart, that there's a huge difference between going through an actual test, right? And then actually going through an emulated environment where you're going to your point about network security as one slice of a broader pie of, cloud infrastructure, or even, just overall security, to be able to have hands-on practical understanding about how things are configured, why they're configured, testing the configuration, right? All in a lab. And I think it's a huge difference. I mean, I think it best prepares, anybody that's doing either continuing education or trying to get into the space to be able to have that real world expertise. Let's talk about, some of these, before we talk more about some of the uniqueness of what We45 has brought to the table in terms of the format. Because I had a chance to, look at the solution that you guys developed, as well as the overall format. And from an ideological standpoint of learning, right, hands-on, I'm a believer. This is why we have such a good partnership. But I want to take a step back, and I want to ask you a question in terms of like hands-on security training. What do you think if you were a CISO for a multinational corporation right now? What would you think? And the assumption is, okay, you're that organization. is fully in the cloud, or at very least at a hybrid model, what are the really the niche themes? It could be about anything. It could be about, IAM policies. It could be about, how do you implement, dynamic testing, or maybe, we see so many still misconfigurations in the cloud. What would be let's say your top 5 security topics that you would say are non-negotiables in today's cybersecurity climate, A, and B, this is a great segue into how is the courseware that you and your team have developed, how have they kind of tackled that and created some great classes to have the hands-on experience?
Yeah, both very good questions. Now, let me answer the first one, but let me preface it a little bit, right? So one of the things that you will see today, especially with companies, and I'm sure you've seen this with your clients as well, is that your technology teams are pretty full stack today, right? So it's developers also need to understand cloud. They need to understand Kubernetes, or they need to understand deployment environments. Your DevOps needs to understand dev plus deployment environment. So today it's kind of like an intermingling of disciplines, right? So it's not really this, hey, I'm a developer, I need to know PHP or .NET or whatever it is. I don't care about the rest of the stack. That's not true anymore. If you're a developer, you probably need to understand how container images work, where does it get deployed, what kind of policies you need to have when it gets deployed, or let's say it's getting deployed in an AWS Lambda environment, what kind of idiosyncrasies and security issues exist in those. So you're dealing with a pretty full stack problem today. So with that in mind, one of the things that you should keep in mind is that you need to have facets that educate multiple pillars of that stack, right? So you need to have facets of education and hands-on education that talk about, hey, if you're a developer, you need to understand secure code, but you also need to understand AWS Cloud, AWS IAM, that sort of stuff. And if you're a DevOps, you need to understand, yeah, these are pipelines, but this is how you can do security in those pipelines. And this is how your pipelines can get attacked. And this is how you can secure those pipelines. And if you're in the cloud, if you're already pursuing a cloud security strategy, you need to understand the rest of the puzzle, which is basically, okay, when you're running Kubernetes on top of the cloud, this is what you need to do. When you're running application workloads, these are the type of application workloads that you have. So I would say the top 3 today is really about understanding access control across the stack, right? Right from things like OAuth, OIDC, to general authentication, authorization, cloud IAM, Kubernetes IAM, that stuff. Then there's also an entire discipline of security engineering, right? How do you roll out crypto? What do you do? How do you ensure that secrets are managed correctly? How do you roll this out across the cloud environment? What options do you have on the cloud for this to happen? And finally, of course, how do you build all of this, bake all of this in, which is why we have classes on threat modeling and security architecture review in the platform as well. So it's not just about the only technical hands-on stuff, but it's also understanding how all the pieces fit. So I would say these are the top 3 things that I think companies should be looking at when they're training their people. And hands-on, of course, underscores all of this, right? This is where hands-on really comes in. Now, one of the things that we have done with our courseware, coming to your second question, is we have always looked at where the hockey puck is going and not where the hockey puck has already been. So our focus is application security and all of its allied areas, right? So that's why we have courseware around application security, DevSecOps, all 3 clouds, all 3 major clouds. I'm talking AWS, Azure, GCP, and of course, Kubernetes, threat modeling. And we also have a few modules now on offensive security. So we have more than, I think right now we're like around 800 plus labs. So you have a massive library. And the way we do courseware is that we take up microcosmic topics, and we also have different learning tools. So we have something called courses, playgrounds, and challenges. Now, courses it has a combination of videos and labs. So which is where we've strayed away from the typical LMS. We looked at all the LMSs around and we realized that this just doesn't fit into the LMS world, because you have labs embedded in the courses. So that's how the labs work. Then you have something called playgrounds for people who are a little bit more aware of things. Let's say you're a developer, you're already aware of, yeah, I need to do input validation this way, I need to do this way, but you want to learn about some specific way to apply cryptography or some specific source composition analysis tool. We have playgrounds, which is just labs. There's no videos, there's no preamble, there's no post, there's nothing. Just go into the lab, work on it, figure it out, move on, right? So that's one thing. The third thing that we've introduced that's become extremely popular with companies in our space is challenges. And challenges basically, essentially, is an assessment environment. So we're not only training you, but we're also giving you assessment tools. So challenges allows people to roll out. So we give them vulnerable environments like vulnerable code or vulnerable cloud environments and things like that. And they need to fix it. So it's like a reverse CTF, if you will, right? In the CTF, you need to find a vulnerability and get a flag. Here, you need to find the vulnerability, fix the vulnerability, and then you get a flag. So that's how, and all of this is automated. So that's one of the ways that we've built out the courseware. So the idea is we're attacking the problem of boring security training through all of these three things so that we're not, and one of the things that I hate about a lot of the typical security training is that they talk down to extremely intelligent people, right? All of these technical folks are super intelligent people. They know their stuff. You can't talk down to them. So our idea is that we give them realistic stuff that they get to appreciate, and through that get trained. So that's really what we're after.
Yeah, so many great points there, and I'll begin in reverse order. I wanted to say that that's so true. You look at traditional training from, yeah, and I will say that there's not, you guys hit a niche, right? You guys hit a niche in the defensive training, like hands-on defensive, not just defensive training, but hands-on defensive training, operationalizing. How do you actually go in there and do the proper configuration, implement automation, security automation, through some of the courseware and the labs and the playgrounds that you mentioned. But I do agree with you. One of the pet peeves too I think it's a defensive mechanism psychologically that traditionally you would have instructor-led security training that would largely be very, talking down to their students, right? Oh, you don't know this. You feel almost like intimidated. So I think that you're on to something in terms of having a format where as a student, you feel like, what, I feel comfortable here. I'm talking to another engineer who values me as an engineer, and I'm just, doing continuous learning. Because the reality is the following, is that as we all mentioned, the tech stack is only going to grow, right? It's only going to grow. There's so many variants of technology, of programming languages, and the new evolution of frameworks and micro frameworks. That's not going to change. There's not going to be a steady state, right? It's only going to continue to evolve. So everyone is really being humbled by the progress that technology is evolving at. So there's no reason to be able to have that level of condescending instructor type of mentality. Now, I want to close out because I know I'm appreciative of your time, but operationalizing training and ongoing just hands-on lab work. So one of the things that works well between VerSprite and We45 is that we see we're both creative different entities, right? One of the things that we do with our 400 plus international clients is that we're always looking for a tailored engagement model. And I just wanted to kind of put down some ideas. There might be a viewer out there that's considering, oh, this all sounds good. I really like the training. How do I operationalize this? Well, in leading a global international cybersecurity firm for the past 17 years, we've seen a lot, right? 400 plus companies in different vertical markets. Here's some ideas, and I'd love to get Abhay's take on this, but let me just talk about purple teaming, red versus blue. Usually when you have a purple teaming, you have a red team going against a blue team. It can be through a purple team, very collaborative event. Now, the preparatory aspects of that, could begin with some operational training, right? In the cloud, in doing some level of prep work for security workflow automation, maybe for response. There's a lot of platforms today that could allow for automated response that basically come off of technical triggers. Maybe an IOC is detected, something fires off. It could be a Terraform script, it could be a Python script, it could be a Lambda script, something going off, right? And so part of the planning of what am I going to do can come with going into the weight room, which the weight room is maybe a playground or a lab. So there's what I'm talking about here is unifying some of the traditional activities that happen for very large, companies that do invest in red teaming, pen testing, audits, purple teaming, etc. And to be able to say, when do I do my training? Do I want to train them before an actual simulation to make sure that they're well prepared? That kind of is a way to kind of get them ready for a friendly Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu event, metaphorically speaking, of course. What are some thoughts that you have around this? We're really big on operationalizing traditional security activities because one of the problems that we've seen over the past 17 years is that they're isolated, right? You guys do training, you guys do architecture, you guys build the environments, you guys do the hardening, and there isn't that workflow. And so one of the things that we've always been trying to bring to the table with our clients at VerSprite is to be able to have kind of what we call the domino effect, where things lead into another activity. What are some of your thoughts about some of that? And do you have some ideas where training from your own client base has, prefaced or maybe followed a security activity?
I think, yeah, I mean, there are different ways of going about it in different companies, depending on the kind of structure that they have used our tools differently. So one of the things that I found very successful is that our tool is used extensively to do training for security champions, and that's becoming a area of focus that a lot of companies are taking a big deal. I mean, they're talking about it and also doing it in a big way. The problem is today is that with a lot of companies, they don't know where to start and where to stop with their security champions. So that's where the continuous learning approach that AppSec Engineer provides, the platform provides, gives them the ability to do that. So you can, in the platform, you're able to assign courses, you're able to assign challenges, you can create tests and things like that so that they can just go and start taking it. So that's worked pretty well. So we've seen large companies who work with us. These are companies that have hundreds of thousands of developers, and obviously they want security champions embedded in most of these teams. Their security champions have taken back a lot of stuff, and this is evolving over time. So it starts off with the basic AppSec stuff, basic cloud stuff, and then they have like a graduation and evolving program, so to speak. So that has worked pretty well for some of our customers. Some of our customers use this as an incentive program. So one of the things that they do is they have a security training festival during the month of October or something like that. And it's linked to their KPIs, it's linked to their performance incentives and things like that for the year. And we have a way of automatically issuing certificates and badges and stuff like that. So it also motivates people to achieve those badges, the whole Pokemon, to give the Pokemon Go metaphor, gotta catch them all. So the idea here is that they want to catch them all. So that's one of the things that some companies have successfully done as well. So it can be, the idea is that you want to give them the tools so they can do it at strategic junctures. And I think you should also give them the tools that they can learn from at any given point in time. Use it like a reference, if you will, right? So let's say they want to understand OAuth and OIDC. And let's say they're implementing Okta or whatever, Auth0, whatever it is. You want them to be able to learn what these different workflows are, and they can just do it. They can just get on the platform. They're like, hey, I want to learn about Auth and OIDC, do a couple of labs around that, and they're off to the races. They understand the concept so much better, so they can actually implement it a whole lot better as well. So it can be used in multiple ways. So that's where we are trying to, influence that, part of their habits. So
oh, sounds good. Hey, I really appreciate the time. Tell everyone where people can follow you, track you down, and ask more questions.
Sure. I am pretty active on Twitter. I'm at Abhay Bhargav on Twitter, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. So these are usually the best places to find me. And on LinkedIn, you can just look up Abhay Bhargav. Usually I should be, I think I'm the first one you should usually find, especially if you are looking from a security kind of profile. So yeah, these two are pretty much the ideal places to find me.
That's one of the benefits of having a unique name, there's easy to decipher and find. So I'm at T0NYUV on Twitter. You can follow more information on VerSprite at www.versprite.com. Follow us on YouTube, where I think this video will be on, as well as on the We45 channel. Please subscribe and like and share with everyone. And Ape, always a pleasure. I'll be looking for you in San Fran, and hope to catch up with you then.
Absolutely. Look forward to that as well. Thanks, Tony.
Take care.
Dark line, oh, dark line.